All right, I'm going to have to, just in the interest of marginal analysis and time, going once, going twice. All right. All right, so the 400, where did it come from? Once you levy the appropriate tax, which in this graph would be $4, that would reduce the quantity from the initial equilibrium of 118 to the new equilibrium, the optimum of 100, and $4 each times 100 is 400. Okay, if that's not clear or duh or obvious or any of those, let us talk. If not, we need to move on. Let's see how we did up here. Wow. All right, are all 13 of you that answered wrong on the 472 clear in what you did wrong? Yes? Yeah, when you initially, get back to the graph here. All right, when you're initially, as a policymaker, looking at this, the quantity is 118. And you say, okay, the economist told me the MSC looks like that and the MPC looks like that. So the efficient thing to do would be to levy a $4 tax. Unfortunately, I guess, fortunately and unfortunately, for those wishing to collect more tax dollars, the $4 tax will diminish the quantity sold by raising the price. So you should not multiply it by the 118, because that, once the tax goes into effect, they won't sell that many anymore. The new quantity, once the tax is in place, is 100. Okay, so $4 each times 100. Okay. Okay, you're in good company. Yeah, oh yes.
Okay, actually, where did you get that $4 from?
Oh, the marginal external cost, MSC minus MPC, is 4, which when the lines are parallel, I know your thumb went up, but just because one person asking always represents others who are wondering as well. Since the lines are parallel, you can pick any spot you want to figure out how far apart they are. The 10 and the 6 are good enough. I'm clearing my throat because it needs clearing, but that noise, somebody's purse or somewhere, would be good to, somebody's got their bag, but their person is not with it. Excuse me a second. Okay. Well, good. Well, that question had its intended result, some discussion, some error removal. We'll move on to the next one. Been doing lots of dead weight losses this semester. This needs to be a concept at this point of kind of like where you kind of go, another one. Right? Kind of yawn and go, duh, and know what to do. All right, well, we'll see. All right, so let's see how that panned out here. All right, we're pretty good on that one. Does any of the 10 people who answered one of the others want to get into that? That's a equivalent of a raised hand. All right. Let me go back to the graph. All right. So the free market amount is 118, and at 118, the marginal social benefit is 13, and the marginal social cost is 17. Okay, so there's a $4 difference between what it costs at that point to produce more, and what it's worth to society to have more. So that's one side of your DWL triangle, which is right there where I'm wiggling the cursor. Okay, and you're 18 away from where you should be. So 4 times 18 is 72, and then divide by 2 is 36. Okay, remember, the divide by 2 basically says what the average dead weight loss is per unit produced. Right? For the first one, from going 100 to 101, almost no dead weight loss. But for the last one, the 1/18th one, a bigger dead weight loss. All right, so yeah, it's because it's a triangle, you divide by 2, but the economics of it is that the dead weight loss per each additional unit past 100 increases. Okay, so the average dead weight loss is 2 times 18 of them. 2 times 18 is 36. Okay, cool. All right. Be assertive about what you don't get. That's the point here. All right, next. Okay, no graph to click on here. Kind of like a jargon recognition question here. This one will go fast because either you got it or you don't. Oh. All right. Stuck there. All right, show answer. All right, so got something positive going on here as a spillover or as an externality. And so if it's policy relevant, you put a subsidy in equal to that external benefit, the MEB, the marginal external benefit, which is equal to the marginal social benefit minus the marginal private benefit. All right, let's check that. Okay, plurality on the right one, but no, you don't want to subsidize when MSC is bigger than MPC. That's the case where you want to have a tax. And it's an external benefit, so not a tax equal to this first one. See, the first one, that's correct if it's an external cost, not benefit. Tradable allowances, that'd be something for something bad you want to restrict the amount of. Okay, so I don't know whether that guesses at what the issue was, but talk to me if you're still wondering why it's answer C. If not, moving on to the next one. All right, we're up there into the stratosphere, 85, 88%. All right, all of those. Okay, for each one of those activities, there's a spillover benefit to outsiders. Okay, recycling effort, you're diminishing the load for the landfill and diminishing the impact on natural resources of mining the raw material. Riding the bus, you're diminishing traffic, right, by getting out of other folks' way. And we discussed the other two in class, so, you know, making it look nice for everybody in your neighborhood, preventing disease spread. Moving right along to, I think, the last one in this segment. All right, one more here. All right, so another one of those all of the above. See, a question that teaches. I bet some of you thought, I don't know about that one, one of those. But the other two or three seem okay, so, all of the above. Yeah, all of those are external cost situations. Right? If you're getting on the interstate at rush hour, you're going to slow everybody else down. Okay, so the last about 10 or 15% of the people are the ones that cause the traffic jam. You get 10 or 15% of the folks off the road at rush hour, everybody else could drive at the speed limit. I mean, that's kind of an average around the country. We talked about the first answer B is sort of a joke. That's a non-policy relevant external cost, but still, I'm sure we've all experienced it. And same with C, not policy relevant. Not sure we want to have a Pagovian tax to hammer people for talking in the library. D probably is policy relevant, right? Dirtying the air, downwind, people breathe it in and get sick, things get dirty. All right, moving along. Question, comment, thought, any of those? All right, moving on here to chapter 11, PowerPoint. All right, as usual, I'm going to have the PowerPoint there, and we're going to kind of go through it, but kind of as an afterthought to having a little bit of actual discussion. Remember, I put up on the board that spillovers and externalities are the same thing. Well, so is perfectly competitive and purely competitive. Randomly pick up a textbook. Some of them will call it purely competitive. Some will call it perfectly competitive. And being a creature of habit, I may call it one or the other and not remember that your book typically calls it perfectly. It's the same thing. And again, it's the same issue too. What doc, can't you just make up your mind and pick one and be consistent? Maybe. But then again, if I do that and somebody else calls it by the other name, then all that you've learned about it will be like, are they talking about the same thing? Is it, so I do have to tell you what the common synonyms are. Price taker. Okay? That's what that means. Not in the military sense. Well, sort of, because the market is giving you an order. Okay, not an order like I want something, but this kind of an order. The going rate, the price right now is $12 a pop. Like it or lump it. Go with that price as a buyer or seller, or don't participate. Of course, you're free to, if as a seller, to sell it for less, but you can sell all you want at the going rate, right? So you could charge 11 if the going rate's 12, and you'd still sell all that you wanted to sell. Okay? But you could charge 12, so why not do that? I mean, after all, in a competitive circumstance, most businesses are just barely making enough to get by, so selling it at the highest possible price isn't greed, it's survival. Now, we're going to talk about monopolies where that's not the case. That's chapter 13. But right now, the going rate is what you can sell it for, and you better, because otherwise you won't survive financially. Okay, and from the buyer's perspective, if the going rate's $12, you can't get it for less than that, and why pay more? That's the going rate. It's clearing the market. Okay, so that's what price taker means. Okay, and here's what it means in a graph. Here's the market, supply and demand, like we've been talking about all semester long, except in the international trade chapter, right? Never mind the foreigners for the moment, back to the regular, just one supply and one demand. Okay, we get a market equilibrium price, the one that causes the quantity demanded for the market as a whole to be equal to the quantity supplied. And now we look at the typical sellers, okay, in a competitive market, and we see as price takers, right, their marginal revenue is equal to whatever the going rate is. What does marginal revenue mean? The change in their total cash flow when they sell one more. Well, if the going rate is whatever this number is, we've been using the number 12, every time they sell another one, they'll have another $12 in the cash register. Change in total revenue when you sell one more, that's MR, marginal revenue. All right, marginal anything is the change in a total something when you do one more unit of something. Okay, and you're always, what your brain is doing, by the way, we're, as walking biocomputers, we're constantly doing marginal analysis. You may not recognize it. It's so secondhand to do it. You're constantly comparing. If I walk a little faster, get there a little sooner, drive a little faster, buy a little bit more, buy a little bit less, constantly making those kinds of choices. Okay, so now we just have to formalize it into an equation. Marginal cost, change in is what this little triangle stands for. Change in total cost when you change the quantity by some small amount, typically 1. Okay, whatever if you're looking at bags of apples and there's 10 in a bag, okay, then it's per bag or per 10 apples. Okay, so whatever increment your decision making is based on, it's a change in that amount, how much it changes your total revenue or your total cost. And just think of it as a common sense level. There you are in business, and every time you sell another one, you've got to make another one, and that increases your costs, change in total cost when you make another one. But you can sell it, of course, so that increases your revenue. What's going to decide, common sense-wise, how many you make? As long as the additional revenue coming in at least covers the additional costs. When it no longer does, you say that's enough. Duh, right? Is duh a fair statement there? Yeah, it's wrapped in a bunch of jargon. Right? And of course, that's the study challenge, is to disentangle all the jargon and get to duh. Right? But starting off just at the common sense level, in business, you're comparing additional revenue when you make another one to additional cost when you make another one. If the additional revenue covers the additional cost, of course, it's nice when it more than covers it, but it has to at least cover it or you're not going to go any further. Unfortunately, sometimes when you do as well as possible, go up to that point where additional revenue just barely covers additional cost and stop, you may still not make a profit. It may be that the demand for the product just isn't there. Right? Doing as well as possible often isn't doing all that well. Then again, doing as well as possible could be wildly profitable too. Right? So always the rule is the same though. The best amount of anything is where the marginal benefit equals the marginal cost, or sometimes you can't make them exactly equal, where the marginal benefit is barely greater. Why would you want them to be equal? Well, that means you've squeezed all the profit that there is. That means that the next one, the additional benefit's not going to be enough to cover the additional cost. Okay, so you don't want to maximize the profit per unit. You want to maximize the total amount in the cash register at the end of the day or the month, which means you want to sell every unit that adds anything to the cash register on a net basis, right? Adds more to the cash register than the additional expenses necessary to make that happen. Okay, so this MR is constant and equal to the market equilibrium price. That's your price taker thing. Okay? As a seller, you can't sell for more because you have competitors that are selling the same thing at the going rate. You could sell for less, but then you're probably just going to croak as a business because in a competitive environment, the going rate's probably just barely enough to get by. Yes?
It's about what you were just saying. Can you give us an example of when you're doing the best you can, but you're still not doing well enough?
Well, I don't have a numerical example off the top of my head. There's one in a little ways in the slides. But sometimes, let's say that your operating cost is a constant $8 a pop, each edition one, and you can't find any way to sell it for more than $6 a pop. No one's willing to pay more than that. Well, that means every time you make the effort to make another one and incur an $8 expense, all you're going to get back is $6. See, you're doing the duh thing, right? Duh, nobody would do that, right? Right? So, right, if you can at least cover your operating expenses by making another one, why do it? Now, in some cases, you may make a loss in the short run that is tolerable in the short run because you're getting back some of your upfront costs. Because if you shut down right away, you'd lose all your costs, and that would be better to get some of those back. In the long run, of course, you have to be making money above and beyond all your costs. Okay. All right, now, there's more complicated versions of this in your book, okay, and on the slides. I thought I would just strip it down to the bare essentials here to start off with, to get you to recognize and actually do some of these calculations. Recognize that all this hieroglyphics, average variable cost, average fixed cost, marginal cost, all of that comes from two columns of numbers. relating total cost to quantity. Now, the first thing that we can recognize from these numbers is that these numbers that I made up here must be for the short run. How can you tell that? Okay, two things are true in the short run. You can't change your capital stock. You're stuck with what you have. What does that mean? Whatever building you use, whatever major tools you have, that's what you're going to be using. You can change the number of workers in the short run, but not the facility that you're working with. And the other thing that's fixed in the short run is the number of competitors, the number of sellers. It takes the long run, by definition, for firms to enter and exit the market. So what about these numbers tells you from one of those two things that you're operating, that these numbers are about the short run and not the long run? Fixed costs are an artifact of the short run, not the long run. In the long run, there's no such thing as a fixed cost, because in the long run, you can be in the business or not. Is that you're straightening your cap, or you have an answer? Oh. Nobody has a notion here of something kind of wacky looking about those numbers there. If you look at all of them and think, why would there be this number next to that number? And that's the thing that tells you it's the short run. Come on now, you stenographers, get the brain cranked up. It's early in the morning. You can actually try. Maybe you're a little shy, you won't raise your hand, but you do want to be doing what I'm rhetorically asking you to do. See, when I say you stenographers, what am I saying? I'm saying you're just sitting there with your pen poised, waiting for me to give the answer and writing it down, and you're not thinking about because this is going to warm you up for the exam where I might ask the same question. You know, present those numbers and say, is those data are for the short run or the long run? And you'd have to look at them and recognize what I'm getting at here. Okay, two things going on in the short run. There are fixed costs in the short run because you can't change your capital stock in the short run. All right, there are facility costs that you incur to open your business to be ready to produce. So before you've produced anything, you've got some costs. And then, of course, you start producing, then you have some additional costs, operating expenses. Hint. Come on, somebody Eric. Bingo, that's it. If there's a cost for doing nothing, you must be in the short run. Okay, so this number right here being something other than 0, next to a quantity of 0, says that these are short run data. Okay, so you've spent $100 to set up everything. You're ready to push the button on your factory or your business to start producing stuff. But you're already $100 spent before you've been in business at all. See, this is why businesses need loans to start usually. They've got some big expenses to incur before they meet their first customer. Okay, and they may have savings to cover that, but if they don't, then they've got to go out and get a loan. The bank has got to trust them to make money enough to pay that money back. All right, so then the costs continue. Now look at the way that they go. They 20, 15, 10, 15. What am I saying? That's the change in these numbers, right? 100 to 120 is 20. 120 to 135, 15. MC, marginal cost. The change in the total cost when we make another one. Notice that those numbers are getting smaller at first, 20, 15, 10, and then getting bigger. What's the common sense behind that? You've got this facility there, some tools that's fixed in the short run. Now it's a question of staffing it. Okay? Picture one person in a huge building. Are they going to very efficiently operate that facility to make stuff? No. I'm being somewhat heroic here and saying even one unit can be produced with some additional cost. It might take a huge additional, it may take a lot more than just 1/5 of the fixed cost to get this place up and running, but small building. Okay, so at first, you're bringing the facility up to capacity. So the costs are going up, but at a decreasing rate, right? As you get the right number of people, which is not an exact number, depends on the price of the product, but sort of the right number of people in that facility to operate it. Okay, so at first the cost per unit, the marginal cost, goes down. 20, 15, 10, and it goes back up 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. See, that's typically the way it goes. See, I made these numbers to reflect the way reality sort of is. At first, as you're bringing it up to sort of an efficient staffing level, the marginal cost goes down. And then as it starts to get a little crowded in there, and you've got it up to the efficient level, but you're trying to squeeze some more output out of it, the cost per each additional unit goes up. People are sharing tools. The tools are getting kind of worn out from not having any break for maintenance. And it's getting a little crowded in the building there. You're able to get a little bit of additional output with some additional people, but not much. And of course, the additional people aren't getting any cheaper. So the cost per unit of output at some point goes up. Okay, it depends on how big of a building it is, at what quantity it starts to turn around and go from going down. I know the total cost isn't going down, but the marginal cost, 20, 15, 10, is going down. Okay, cost per unit falls at first as you produce more and then increases. All right. What's the average cost? Well, if you spend $120 to make one of them, 120 divided by 1, right? If you spend $160 to make 4 of them, I picked that one because it's easy to divide by. 160 divided by 4 was the average across those 4 units. Okay, so average cost is just the total you're spending divided by how many you're making. What's the average variable cost to make 4 of them? What's the fixed cost? Eric told us what the fixed cost was. What's the fixed cost? The amount of cost you incur, no matter what you do, including nothing, is the fixed cost. That's why it's called fixed. What's the fixed cost? 100. Okay, so the average fixed cost keeps getting smaller and smaller as you divide 100 by a larger and larger quantity. To get the variable cost, you subtract 100. Okay, so if you make 4, what's the variable cost? $160 minus 100 is 60, okay, and then the average variable cost is 60 divided by 4. It would be 15. See, now if you're looking at this and you're in business and you're thinking, okay, my marginal cost is 15, how many should I make? Well, let's see. Costs are going down here, so we don't want to be in this range, right? At first, why would I make another one here, right? Additional cost is 20. Okay, 15. Okay, so marginal cost is 15. It's going to take at least a price of $15 for that to make any sense, right? Right, incurring 15 additional dollars to go from quantity 3 to quantity 4. Okay, why not up here? Why not up 1 to 2? Well, because the costs are declining, and if it's worth making 2, you might as well make 3. Okay, but now the costs per unit are starting to go up, so now you're thinking, is it worth it to keep going? The price has got to be at least $15 per unit to make it worth making the 4th one. Okay, if the price is 15, then the marginal revenue is 15, right? Competitive. So how's this firm doing if they stop here with price of 15? Okay, they wouldn't go on, right? Because the next one costs more than an additional 15. So they'd stop here, right? Yes, stock, yes. They would stop, price of 15, they'd stop here. But would they produce any at all? Or would they produce 4 at a price of 15? In other words, would they say, that price is so low, I'm going to shut down? Or say, nah, it's worth it for now. Okay, do the what ifs. If they produce the best possible amount, which is 4 with a price of 15, their revenue is what? 4 times 15. Right, 4 of them selling for $15 each, $60. $60 minus 160 is 100. That's their profit or loss, right? Revenue minus cost is 100. See, I'm doing a lot of this without writing it down because it's all up on the slides. Right now we're trying to have a little bit of conversation, right? Not worry about writing everything down. Okay, it's all in the slides. You can write it down later. Or you can write down as much as you want to now, of course, too. So what do? Do you shut down, keep going, say it's okay for now, or what? Your total revenue minus your total cost at a price of 15 is going to be 60 minus 160, $100. Well, the answer is that it's because you're only barely covering your operating expenses. You're not getting back any of your upfront, what businesses typically call overhead. You're not covering any of the overhead, fixed cost, overhead. That's probably should write that down over here. Fixed cost is the same thing as overhead. So you're on the verge of shutting down. Probably shut down. You're not making anything back on your upfront investment costs. Now, suppose the price was 18. The going rate is 18. Every time I sell one, I'm going to make 18 bucks. You'd still stop at 4. Right? It's not worth going to the fifth one because the fifth one adds $20 to your expenses and you're only going to sell it for 18. That doesn't make any sense. 4 times 18 is what? That is 72. 72 minus 160 is 88. Now it's worth staying open in the short run. If you shut down right away, what is your loss? 100, your fixed cost. You've thrown that away. What if you stay open? What's your loss? 88. Which one of those is better? Well, if those are my choices, I prefer only losing 88 rather than losing 100. Okay, so if price is equal to average variable cost, in other words, just covering your operating expenses, 15 average variable cost, right? 60 divided 160 minus 100 is 60. 60 divided by 4 is 15. That's the average variable cost. If price equals average variable cost or is less than that, shut down right now. If price is above average variable cost, stay open, at least in the short run. Price has to cover average cost in the long run to stay open. But at least in the short run, you stay open. Okay, so again, what's the choice in the short run if the price is $18? The short run choice is to lose 100 or to lose 88. Well, gosh, I wish I didn't have those choices. We wish that in life a lot, right? The choices you have, none of them look very good. Well, you still make the best one you can make. Okay, that's kind of a deep point. So while some of you are pondering that a little bit more, I meant to do attendance here a minute ago. Let's go ahead and do that. You'll learn a lot by trying to make up a set of numbers like that. In other words, say, Doc made up these numbers to reflect the way reality works. How does reality work? Oh, the cost per unit drops at first as we staff up our facility, and then it goes up, so make the numbers do that. Okay, and then find those 4 things, AC, AVC, AFC, MC. You should be able to do that. A, make the numbers up to reflect reality, and to make the curves, once you graph them, look like the curves that we'll see on the PowerPoint here in a minute. And then you should be able to go through them by saying, what if? What if the price is 14? We didn't do that. What if it's 15? We did that. What if it's 18? We did that. We'll do some more in a minute after we finish the attendance here. I'm stuck there at 37%, so maybe that's how many are here out of the 100 or so that are in this class. Going once, going twice, going, gone. All right. All right. Oh, let me do something else while you're pondering on this question here, and that is to move those 5 questions that we just did over to your, there. To your folder. All right. All right, I'll get to the PowerPoint here in a minute, but the PowerPoint, I'm trying to use these just sort of as follow-up now rather than to go, oh, okay, here's what this slide says. I'll go through this way. Tell me if it's better or whether you'd rather have me go through PowerPoint slide by slide. All right, let's do a couple more on the what ifs here. Okay, so 15 or less, shut down. You're not even covering your operating. You're only barely covering or not quite covering operating expenses. 15 or more, you stay open, at least in the short run. Now, let's try another one. Let's try 20. Make it not right, an exact match. Let's say 22. Okay, so what would we do here? Let's see. It would be worth making the fifth one, right? Because the $22 covers this additional cost. How about this next one? Make the sixth one. Does the 22 cover this additional cost? No. Okay, so 5. See, this is where I said MR is equal to MC is the best choice. Unless you can't make them exactly equal, then the MR has to be the slightly larger of the two, right? So see, 6 wouldn't work there. They're not equal. But 25, the cost is more. No go. So we'll price at 22. Write that down in your notes. If, see, that's what we're doing. We're doing what if. What if the price, the going rate, is $22 each? Steady amount. Right here, what I'm covering with my back. Okay, we would choose 5. Okay, write that down there. So, all right, so we'd make 5. Okay, so now we're ready to evaluate how good our best choice is. What's our total revenue? What's our profit or loss? 5 times 22 is our revenue. That's 110. And our expenses, whoops, still 180. Uh-oh. If we stay open, we'll lose 70. If we actually produce the 5, we will be down 70. But if we shut down, just say, whoops, I don't want to lose 70, then we'll lose 100. Right? Because we put that money out, it's a sunk cost. Right? That's a synonym for fixed cost. It's a sunk cost. Right? We spent the money and we're not going to get it back by saying, hey, whoops, changed our mind, didn't want to start the business after all, not working out. No, you're not going to get this money back. It's taxes and rent and those sorts of things, buying machines. Sometimes you can recover some of it, salvage value of tools and that kind of thing. Assume it's sunk, all of it. Okay, so 70, lose 70, or lose 100, lose 70 is better. Okay, so at a price of 22, we stay open in the short run. If it doesn't get better by the time it comes to renew these expenses, to incur them again, if it doesn't improve, then we say, that's it. Go find something else to do. We're not covering our opportunity costs. Okay, another what if. How about 30? No, well, hold on. Let's not an exact match. Let's make it 33. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so does the 30 cover this additional 25, or the 33? Yeah. Does it cover this additional 30? Yeah, it does cover the 30 there, so make at least 7. How about this? Oh, nope. No, on the 8th one, we incur an additional $35, and our price of 33 is not going to cover that, so we make 7. 7 times 33 is what? That's 2... what is that exactly? 231, I think. Somebody do the math. Double check me. Is it 231? See, we're not quite covering it yet. It's pretty close. Okay, the going rate is not quite enough to cover all of our expenses, but it's pretty close. Suppose it's 35, or make it 30. Let's say 36. Okay, another what if. Okay, well that's enough to get to this next level. Okay, let's see. 7 times 36 is how much? That would be how much? 252. Okay. Still not getting there. Okay, so let's see. Does 9 times? Okay, let's say the something. Oh, 8 times. Sorry, 8 times 36. That's what's wrong. 8 times 36. And I thought at this level we'd hit a profit. Okay, 8 times 36 is 286, I believe. Oh, 288, okay. All right, so at $36, this is the quantity, 8. Okay, we wouldn't go to 9 because, see, the additional 40, now that's more than the 36 covers. So at a price, a going rate of 36, we make 288 revenue and 27. Now you're thinking, 18, come on, that's not enough. It's called an economic profit. Total cost includes all the expenses and all the opportunity costs that aren't in the form of expenses. So making anything above what it says TC is means you're making an economic profit. If it was an exact match, in other words, if we were just making 270 and the expenses are 270, that's called a normal profit. See, this is bizarre. I know it's not the way you've related to the word profit. 0 is a normal profit? Well, this is opportunity cost. And some opportunity costs aren't expenses, they're implicit. I quit my job to go start this business. I'm making $40,000 above and beyond my expenses. Oh, I was making $60,000 in my job that I quit to start this business. Uh-oh, loss of $20,000. You're making money. You got $40,000, but you're making an economic loss. Okay, how about the same scenario? You finish up the year, and left over after actual expenses is $100,000. You said, wow, my previous job was $60,000. That was a good move. I have $40,000 more to spend now, $100,000 versus $60,000 because I started this business. That's called an economic profit. You've got $100,000. That's your accounting profit. That's what you got to pay your taxes on. But in terms of your assessment of your success of your business, you're looking at economic profit. More than covered your opportunity costs. Normal in a competitive environment is to only barely cover them. Okay? So if these data were for a real business, we would expect a long-run price with entry and exit of businesses in response to profit in the neighborhood of 34, 33, something like that. 33 wasn't quite enough, was it? 33 left us with a little bit of a loss still. But 34, do the math, let's see. 34, we would still produce this many, right? 7 times 34 is what? Is it enough to cover this? I think so. 7 times 34, you get the math there for me? You see? When the price was 33, that wasn't quite enough. What would happen? Some businesses in the long run would say, I'm out of here. I'm not covering all my opportunity costs. And when they did that, then the supply line would shift to the left, the price would go up. Okay, and if it went up to 34, the remaining businesses that had these costs would now be making just barely $3 above their costs. $3 worth of economic profit. Not much of a magnet, right? What do I mean by magnet? When economic profit is being earned by a typical business, that will attract competition. See, above opportunity cost means you're doing pretty well. That will attract competitors. Okay, so once the price rises above $33, you'll begin attracting competitors and it'll come back down again. Okay, so at first, let's say this is $33. That will induce some firms to leave because 33 is not enough to cover all opportunity costs. Okay, the supply line will shift to the left. Let's suppose a bunch of businesses leave, maybe too many, and the price goes up to $35. Now the typical firm will be making an economic profit. Okay, and which means some businesses will come back, shift back the other way. That's what's going on out there in the real world. That's how the price system works. Remember back from chapter 7. Only now we have these additional numbers to get into it a little bit more. Okay, the presence or absence of economic profit regulates market entry between different businesses. It regulates resource allocation to different endeavors. Businesses, all things being equal, prefer to make a profit over making a loss. So where there are profits to be made, there will be copycat entrepreneurs saying, I can do that. And they go in and give competition to the existing firms. See, that's why we have a patent system for innovation, is to slow that process down a little bit but not stop it entirely as a reward for being a successful inventor. You get 17 years, I think that's still the right number for most patents. I'm not sure where it came from, but you get 17 years until the copycat entrepreneurs can copy what you invented and compete against you selling it, which for society is good at some point, is to have lots of competition. But we say, no, not right away, because that'll reduce the incentive to go be an entrepreneur, which is expensive, right? To tinker and invent something and do experiments. I was at Thomas Edison's lab a couple of weeks ago. He tried 180 something different filaments for the light bulb before he found the one that worked. That wasn't free to do all that experimentation. But he knew that if he could figure it out, he'd rake in some serious money, which he did. But not forever. Now there's all kinds of competing producers of light bulbs. Okay, so for a while he got to rake the bucks in. That was his reward for being a successful entrepreneur, a delay in the copycat entrepreneur process. Okay, but ultimately, availability of profit regulates the movement of resources from where profits are smaller or losses are bigger to industries where profits are larger. All right, so we've done a bunch of what ifs. We're going to go through the PowerPoints here in a second and probably cover almost the same thing again, but just sort of in a more, well, maybe a more boring way, but a more systematic way. In any event, somewhere along the way there, you may wish to say, I didn't ask enough questions getting ready for exam 2, and that's why I missed a bunch of questions. Maybe I better not do that again, getting ready for exam 3, especially there's a little more content on exam 3 than exam 2, so got to be especially on your game to do that. Okay, so first of all, what do we mean by a purely competitive industry? Oops, there I go again. Perfectly competitive, I think is the term in your book. Anyway, same thing. Many buyers and sellers, and the sellers are selling pretty much exactly the same thing. See, if you don't have that assumption in there, which isn't really that critical for robust competition, but if you don't have that middle assumption there, that middle feature, then this line isn't exactly horizontal and it isn't exactly salute. Like, for example, consider the breakfast taco market. Do different producers sell different breakfast tacos? Sure. Do people have a preference for one firm's breakfast taco over another's? Sure. Could one firm charge an awful lot more for a breakfast taco than another? No, because it's competitive. But you have some customer loyalty based on the specifics of your product, and so you're not just a price taker. You do have some control over how much you charge without either throwing money away or not having any customers at all. Okay, so this middle feature here is just about making this easy for us to talk about by creating this going rate issue, which is accurate for a lot of markets. You know, a lot of markets, the different places you could buy the stuff at, you get exactly the same thing. For a lot of other markets that are competitive, it's not exactly the same thing. It's pretty darn close. So we could draw the line like this. See a little bit of slope to it. Very elastic, but not infinitely elastic. But we're not up to that point yet in our economics study. We will make the simplifying assumption that competitive means this in all cases. And the most important characteristic of a competitive market by far is the third one. Okay? For it to be truly competitive, there has to be the ability of those copycat entrepreneurs to get in and out as they see fit. Okay? So that it's not that hard to get in if it looks good to get in, or it's not that hard to get out of there with your money intact. It doesn't cost a lot to leave a market that you want to get out of. See, because if that wasn't true, then every time the demand increases, which we know it constantly does because of increased population and income, and there's other shifters, but at least those two are always increasing the demand for things that are not becoming obsolete. And so if it wasn't easy to enter or exit the market, the price would steadily increase and profits would steadily grow, which is what a lot of businesses that are in a market would like to see happen, and they managed to game the system to some extent. We call that crony capitalism, to where it is hard to get in the market, so that the price in the long run does creep upward. Most of that happens through licensing. It's amazing all the things that you have to have a license for, that there's not any health or safety issues or anything like that. And yeah, we want the MDs to be licensed, for example. But gardeners, hairstylists, well, I don't know. I guess it could take a couple of weeks to recover from a bad haircut. But anyway, I think recently I read somewhere about 30% of the jobs now you have to have some kind of a permission from somebody to do that, up from about 6% about 50 years ago. So more and more businesses are figuring a way to game the system to slow the rate of entry into their business so that when demand increases from population and income, that the copycat entrepreneurs can't just jump right in and keep the price down at the minimum level. Minimum level is good from us buyers' perspective and good from a market efficiency perspective too, because it allocates resources in the benefit maximizing way that we described last time, which is where all the marginal benefits are the same across all the businesses. Okay, so the book, I'm not sure if they use the term price taker, but I am using it. I think it's a central term. That's what this statement says, okay? No single buyer has any influence on the market price. Price taker. Okay? Whatever the going rate is, created impersonally by market forces, that P sub E there, that's the going rate. Same market price for everybody. Okay, so here's the graph that I drew up on the board. Okay, so there it is. This set right there. Okay, so what happens in a competitive market when a firm wants to sell it for more than everybody else is charging? No business, all right? So oil may be in inelastic demand, right? In other words, that doesn't change much. When the price changes, quantity demand, it doesn't change. But why is that? Because petroleum products, many of them like gasoline, don't have any close available substitutes. But what if an individual firm producing oil raises its price? Well, there's lots of close and available substitutes. The oil coming from other firms. Okay, so above the market price, no customers. Below the market price, you're just giving money away in a competitive market. That typically doesn't work survival-wise for very long. Okay, what kind of demand? Okay, that I just got into. Infinitely elastic, right? That's what this means. Infinitely elastic. Any change in price, huge change in quantity, infinitely elastic. Again, this is just fishing for questions again from what I mostly already went over. Just putting it on black on white in slightly different words. Right? That's important because out in the real world, this knowledge that you're gaining may not arrive in exactly the same words that you're hearing it or reading it now. Okay, so I did my version here a minute ago. Now there's the Cowan-Tabarrok version. It's a little different, say exactly the same thing in slightly different ways. Okay, so I just did the thing about the oil there. Okay, some basics here. What's profit? Let me write that up on the board here because that's central. We've already used up the P for price, so the symbol that we use when we don't want to write the whole word out for profit is the pi sign. Economists, if you haven't figured this out already, love their Greek alphabet. So here it is. Okay, so total revenue minus total cost, and since total revenue I'll go ahead and write it that way. Okay, total cost divided by quantity is equal to average cost, so just put the quantity on the other side. So that is important because profit is also quantity times the difference between price and average cost. Okay, again, I think we've covered those items there. Okay, as price takers, it's not up to them to set a price. Okay, so it's just a matter of how many do we want to make given that price. Okay, per firm in a competitive market must sell its output at the going rate. Profit maximization depends on choosing the right quantity, right? That's what we were doing as we did the what if when we went through here. What if some number is the price? What quantity would they pick? Okay, we just did this a minute ago with this example. Okay, the what if was, suppose the price is 18 or 20 or whatever, all the numbers we went with. That means that's would be the marginal revenue. Compare additional revenue to additional cost. Choose a quantity. Okay, and then at that point assess whether that quantity and price is enough to stay in business, long run, short run, or not at all. Okay, that's what we were doing up here. Okay, have a read of it and see if it sounds like what we just did with that example there. Okay, so here's your MC and then MR, same thing, total revenue when you make another one. Competitive marginal revenue is constant, equal to the going rate. Okay, MR is equal to P there with the little parenthetical statement. Okay, you see what I was saying earlier? I said, let's just start with the bare basics here, right? So this set of numbers, now we have something a little more elaborate there. Putting the total revenues and prices and all that in the same set of numbers. Well, you could do that too, right? When you do your what if, start with this, okay? Not my numbers, but you make up your own, okay? And then say, okay, what if, and then you draw in you write in the next column, which would be the total revenue column. What if the price is 33? The first number is 1 times 33, the next number is 2 times 33, and then so on. Whereas here it's 50, 50, 100, 150. Okay, and then the total cost, that would be, suppose you have those numbers, okay, you have a different setup there. And then you subtract the two columns, and that's your profit. Okay, and if you look down that column, you find out, maxed out at 7 or 8. Why is it pointing at 8? What's wrong with 7? Why isn't 7 just as good or maybe better? Comes back to that definition of opportunity cost. See, for that 8th one, the additional revenue covers the additional cost, including all costs, implicit, explicit, including a normal, which includes a normal rate of return. Okay, so 8 is better than 7. Not much better, but a little bit better, even though it looks like the profit is the same. The economic profit is the same, the 194. Okay, but the 8th unit yields a normal rate of return on that last one. It's good. Normal rate of return is good. Better than stopping at 7. Not much better, but a little better to stop at 8. That's why when I did this example, I said, let's not do ties. I did the first one. I said, I don't mean this kind of a tie. I mean, 15. I said, wait a minute, that might have been, okay, 15, fine. 4 times 15, we get $100 left over, and then it's not for sure exactly what to do. After that, I said, okay, let's make it like 21 or something like that, or 22. So we wouldn't get an exact tie here on whether to move forward or not. But so you get an exact tie here on the 8th one, right? The additional revenue, 3rd column from your right, and the additional cost, 2nd column from your right, is exactly 50. So the 8th one, we're sort of breaking even on that, but breaking even is okay. Better than not doing so. A normal profit is enough to keep you in business. A normal profit is normal for a competitive market. In other words, just barely having total revenue equal total cost. Market entry will occur until the typical firm only makes a normal profit. Okay, so if TR is bigger than TC for a typical firm, the price in that market will tend to decrease as firms are attracted into and enter that market. Let's see. Okay, so you've got marginal revenue, marginal cost on there. Okay, so if you were going to do this, you might want to expand your table, maybe have your piece of paper be landscape rather than portrait. and put in a column for each of these to practice computing those. Okay, all of those come from the third column to the left there, against comparing it with quantity. Okay, MC, AFC, ATC, AVC, AC. All of those come from that TC column and the Q column together. Questions, comments, thoughts? Okay, there we have it in a graph form. Okay, you have my graph here. I put the MC on there. Okay, suppose the demand increases. Okay, so here's the demand increasing. Okay, the demand increase will cause the market equilibrium price to increase, and that will increase the marginal revenue, raise the line, and that will increase quantity produced. Okay. Suppose we have the marginal or average cost line on here. Okay, so initially, there was only a normal profit being made. Look at my thing way over there where it says Q times P minus AC. At this Q star quantity, the initial one, price and average cost are the same. Okay, so profit is 0, which is a long-run equilibrium condition. Market entry will occur until the typical firm is only just barely covering opportunity costs, which means expenses and all other implicit costs of being in business. For most people, for most small businesses at least, the implicit cost, the main implicit cost of being in business was probably two. One is taking savings out of the bank and losing the interest on the savings. And the other one is you could be working as an employee somewhere making a salary. And so that's the other implicit cost of running your own business. Okay, so this here says you're covering all of those. Price times quantity is the same thing as quantity times average cost. Okay, you're covering all of your opportunity costs, and all included, which includes expenses. Okay, so again, we've been working with this so far. So okay, as this last example hopefully showed, the MC line is in effect a supply line for this firm. As the price goes up, you go to a new spot on the MC line to decide how many to make. That's exactly what we did when we did our what if over here with the different prices. Okay, as the what if price increased, okay, we went to a higher and higher quantity. Okay, so the market supply line is the combination of all the business firms' supply line that are in that market. Okay, so that's why we've often this semester done that. Okay, for each firm, they compare price to marginal cost to decide how much to make. So all firms together will be doing the same thing. So the market supply is the MPC, marginal private cost. Only in Chapter 10 did we bother to distinguish between MPC and MSC. Okay, so most of the time it's just MC, marginal cost. Okay, but in some cases it's worth distinguishing between the two, marginal private cost or marginal social cost. If it's just MC, we're assuming they're the same. There's no difference between the two. Okay, so there's that point there written on your slide. Okay, so again, same point on your slide as I just made up on the board. For those of you sitting in the back, that's probably especially useful to see it up on the screen because you probably can't see what I've written on the board here unless you have binoculars or something. Don't hesitate to ask for further clarification because of hard to see circumstances. Something to do later on. Okay, again, nothing new there that we didn't just talk about. Okay, you might have wondered what this is down here. Oops, get rid of that. N is the number of firms. Okay, so taking the Q sub E from over here, dividing it by N is what gives you this quantity and that quantity. Notice that if each firm finds the quantity at which price equals marginal cost, then we'll have that cost minimizing condition being met without any central planner, without any dictates, without anything other than people pursuing self-interest. We'll automatically have the marginal cost be equal across all the producers of whatever. Okay, something we talked about back in the externality chapter, I do believe. Yeah, the last chapter. Okay? To minimize the cost of pollution abatement across a bunch of pollution sources, the marginal cost needs to be the same for emission reduction for all of them. To minimize the total cost of making X, or concrete, or widgets, or whatever, marginal cost needs to be the same across all the business firms, and if they're all looking at the same price, and marginal revenue is equal to price, then marginal cost will end up the same. Okay. This example here makes the same point within a particular business that has multiple facilities. Okay, to minimize the cost of producing a certain amount, the marginal cost has to be the same across these two businesses. This is something to study later on as you review this, when you're trying to think of additional examples that jive with my first introduction to this point back in the externality chapter of why would one pollution source trade allowances with another one? It'd be a situation like this. When the pollution source that buys allowances spends money on allowances, what they're saying is, I'd rather spend the money on allowances than on emission reductions. The allowances are cheaper. And the firm selling the allowances says, oh, okay, I can reduce my emissions for less than I can sell these allowances for. Okay? So the same basic idea. When the farmer moves production from one place to another place, he may incur cost B by producing 3 more on farm 1 and save area A by reducing production on farm 2, for example. So combine that when you study that concept of equal marginal costs. Combine this example in chapter 11 with the discussion of the same concept back in chapter 10. Okay, on that note, with 5 minutes left, let's do a couple more top hat questions, and we'll call it a day. But we want to nail down some of this with the top hat questions. All right. There we go. Got all those devices fired up. See, there's a lot of different ways of saying the same thing. You think, somebody's looking, what? Yeah, the net revenue, that means money left over after expenses covers the opportunity costs that aren't actual expenses. In other words, my example with, oh, I quit my job making $60,000 a year to operate this business. Okay, normal profit means that after meeting expenses, you have $60,000 left over. Okay, so you're making the same amount after actual expenses as what else you could be doing, your opportunity cost. All right, let's see how we did. Okay, means revenue is equal to operating expenses plus fixed costs. Now the key word there is expenses. No. See, the cost includes more than just expenses. So that's why D is not correct. Jonathan, hang on just a second. Let's go back to this. All right. Yes?
Would that also make it correct because you having a profit like that will attract competitors?
No, a normal profit means that you're just barely covering opportunity costs. You don't have anything left over after expenses and covering the cost of not doing something else that you could otherwise be doing. For example, those two things that I said were the main cost of being, for example, in a small business, giving up the money you could be making as an employee and taking money out of the bank and no longer earning interest on it. That means your revenue is more than your expenses by that amount. That's not going to get anybody else excited to say, I want to get into that industry. It's not also going to tell the folks in the industry there's not any reason to leave. Okay, unless something that's easily within their realm to do is making huge economic profit. Okay, is that a thumbs up there, Jonathan? Or okay, cool. All right, maximum. Okay, well, I'm reading the question to you. Okay, all of those are different ways of saying the same thing. See, got all that out of my system, out of your system. You know, those all mean the same thing now, all those different hieroglyphics. That just says, hey, you ain't covering at least your operating expenses. Exit, right? Immediate closure, exit. See how we did, and then it'll probably wipe us out in terms of time. Okay, vast majority picked all of the above. Now let's move on to last one for today. I want to ask this one because it's similar to the previous one. And then we'll call it a morning. Oh, Tyler question? Oh, you're just doing your air graph there, okay. Do remember as you study for your exam 3, I did dip into these top hat questions pretty extensively, along with your homework, of course, to make up test 2. All right, time is up, so I better get into it here. All right, so they're making a loss, but not going to close immediately. That means they're at least covering their operating expenses and maybe a little bit more, which means you're not making a normal profit. Price is less than average cost, but your price is above average variable cost. So it's one of those situations that we had before where we said, do you want to lose 70 or do you want to lose 100? Okay, well, 70 losing is better than 100. Okay, that would be answer C. And whoops, yeah, see, fooled you. The previous one was all the above. No, 3 of those are wrong. And we'll pick up with that with Q&A at your discretion next time. And bump those into your